law firms in order to make their case. And you know, it is a battle, and they are pitched to wage it and to win it. And I must say that against the resources that the developers have in these projects, you know, we're pretty small, but I think they have noticed and they are paying attention.
Do you have some experience?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. What, in your opinion, what would this kind of project have? What would the effect be on, say, Fort Bragg?
I don't think it would be great. I think a fair amount of retail from our city already comes to the Ukiah Valley, given that Ukiah Valley captures 50% of all retail in the county. And the coast has 16,000 people, which is about the size of the city of Ukiah, so you can get a sense that they're not all shopping on our side of the mountains. So I don't think it would be great. I'm not sure it would be huge, to be honest. And that's a little bit why I question their numbers, because for Fort Bragg, whether they shop at Mervyn's or Costco or Walmart or Costco doesn't make any difference to us. But it would make a big difference to the city of Ukiah versus Mendocino County in terms of sales tax. And I also think that not only are the businesses that are interested in moving into this project paying attention, I would bet that the other large big box retailers are paying very close attention to this discussion as well. And they may at some point actually come out against this project too.
Talk a little bit about, and I think, Marie, you could probably address this, the idea of sales tax sharing. You talked about the effect on the city of Ukiah versus the county. How would that work in a situation like this?
Yeah. Well, my understanding, and anybody in the audience who wants to correct me if I'm wrong can, since I just got into this last week, is that originally the city and the county were in discussions about a tax sharing agreement that would be a 50-50 agreement when Costco was considering a location within the city. And then as soon as the county heard that Costco was interested in a location in the county, they're like, oh, well, we don't really need that tax sharing agreement after all. So, you know, I think it is a conversation. A project such as this will require CEQA review, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. And that's also a very good leverage for the community to be involved. And I imagine that one of the aspects of the analysis for CEQA will be the implications on the economy and the tax situation for the county and the city.
Mm-hmm. Michael, did you want to address that at all? Okay. If you could each maybe give us some ideas about what you think might be a good thing for that site.
Yeah. So here's my fantasy. Okay. I'm not going to pretend that this is going to be easy or fast, but I got an extensive tour today. Oh, is that what we're using? Okay. Well, good. We'll abandon this. I got an extensive tour today of the area, and what I saw in almost every place was this kind of Swiss cheese appearance of things. You know, there are great pockets of beauty and thriving activity, and right next to them, everywhere, there are dead zones. And so I think one of the challenges here is to really do a major infill development project. And I think trying to assemble a kind of Ukiah-wide fund, let's call it a nonprofit for the moment. It doesn't have to be, but let's call it a nonprofit. And this fund might get, you know, several $1 million of community foundation money and philanthropic money, and this fund would go out there and start buying up properties. This fund also would get a new markets tax credit designation from the federal government, which would allow other investors to come into it and get a 40% tax write-off over 6 years. You might do some bond fundraising as well, and we could then build on that, leverage that $5–10 million into $50 or $100 million. With that money, you then start acquiring properties that are critical to kind of creating a continuity of development. And at least that enables the community to start making some decisions that are much more rational and considered about how they want to expand all kinds of businesses, whether retail, industrial, additional residential, and so forth. And it just would begin to start letting you take control over your economy. Now, I have to say one other thing too, which is that personally, I think the idea of attracting a big industrial player is a loser of an economic development strategy. So I would not hold that property for, one big fish that you're going to land, because big fish are notoriously poor performers at economic development. It would be much smarter to figure out how you could make that land available. If industrial is your rabbit, to put hundreds of smaller fish there, like the Rose Development Company has put in other sites, and as far as I can see, everything he's put out there has been tapped out. There is a demand by small and medium-sized industrial developers. That is your future.
Thank you, Marie.
We're finally going to have a debate. I disagree entirely. It had to happen sooner or later. I actually don't think cities are in a very good position to take on activities of the private sector. And the reason for that is because I think they are too susceptible to bad decisions from a business perspective based on policy goals. And I think they can often, where you see cities that have done this in a big way, like I can think of a few in Orange County that essentially, lost their shirt by investing in the stock market because they thought they were so dang bright. I really don't think that's the role for cities. I do, however,
just to be clear, I wasn't proposing city money go into
it. I know you were proposing a nonprofit, and I've, as part of my consulting experience and work experience, I've worked in a number of nonprofits. And anybody who's worked in a nonprofit knows that decision-making in nonprofits is very complex. They aren't the most nimble organizations on the planet. But be that as it may, I do agree that infill development is highly appropriate in this town. What's different about this town and Fort Bragg is largely built out, except for the mill site. We have very few undeveloped parcels. And the undeveloped parcels that we have are almost entirely within the coastal zone, which means that they have a lot of extra layers of approval that turn people off and turn developers off. So I think Ukiah does have lots of opportunity for infill. Your housing market right now is not very strong. I don't see that as a real viable use for that site. You might be able to do some housing. I do support mixed use, but in this case, it might be a mixed use that includes some, not the entire site for industrial, but some larger parcels for industrial. And I don't see a problem with holding it for 5 or 10 years. Even if you have to hold it that long, in 10 years, you have a site that's got great transportation connections, that has sewer and water that's good to go, so that if there is somebody who wants to come in and take it, they're ready. And the problem with the rezoning is it's very easy to zone up. It's very hard to zone back down. So it's very easy to go from industrial to retail, and from retail to residential, and from residential to high density residential. It's very hard to take something that's zoned residential and turn it back into industrial, or something that's zoned commercial office and turn it back into industrial. Because what you're basically doing is you're taking value away from that property owner. And they are going to go to city council or planning commission screaming and yelling the whole way and get really pissed off. And a lot of people feel, because many of us own property, that when we bought it at a certain zoning, we kind of expected to at least keep that value. You get pretty pissed off if someone said, you know what, that property that you have that allows 2 units, we're going to change that. You can only have 1 unit now. You wouldn't like that, right? I don't think so. So it's a very important thing when you rationalize land planning to plan for the future. That's why we call it long-range planning. I think the site could very easily include some flex space, some light industrial, some live-work, some retail.